Could that really be Boba Fett in The Mandalorian? Disney Plus is finally here, and along with all the brand new shows and movies and fresh from the vault classics, is the first ever live-action Star Wars TV show, The Mandalorian. And it's no McClunky to say that The Mandalorian is a hit. The ending definitely had fans talking. If you want to find out what about exactly, watch yesterday's Nerdist News for a comprehensive breakdown. But there was one other massive question that had a bunch of fans in a tizzy. In a blink and you'll miss it cameo, fans literally paused their screens to say, wait, is that Boba Fett hanging out with the Mandalorian clan? Cause either it is, or maybe it's just some dude pulling off some seriously righteous Boba Fett cosplay. Now, before we break all of this down, we'd like to ask you to like and subscribe so we continue doing these awesome breakdowns like this in the future. Anyway, could that really be Boba Fett? Let's get into it. Now, first off, the history. The Mandalorian takes place 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and the last we saw of old Boba Fett in that film was when the bounty hunter took a big old plunge into the wide open mouth of a sarlacc to be digested over 1,000 years. Which, I know sounds implausible, but that's besides the point. What is Boba Fett made of, chewing gum? Maybe the sarlacc feeds off of pain and prolong its victims' lives to make it even more tormenting, but I don't know. You'd have to ask Kyle Hill on Twitter, @Psy_file, how exactly a sarlacc would digest Boba Fett for 1,000 years, and how many calories would be inside one Robert Fett. But anyway, that's on you to tweet at him directly right now. But suffice it to say, for all intents and purposes, as it pertains to Return to the Jedi, Boba Fett died. But you can't keep a fan favorite character down, especially not in the Star Wars galaxy. In the old Star Wars expanded universe, Boba Fett actually survived his swim in the sarlacc's stomach to bounty hunt yet another day. In fact, in that continuity, it's even implied that Boba Fett buried the hatchet with Han Solo decades later when he saved the smuggler's life during the Yuuzhan Vong invasion. Oh man, do you think we'll ever see like Dash Rendar on the big screen someday with his dumbass little N64 face, so pixelated? That's what he looks like in real life. Anyway, after Disney bought Lucasfilm, all of that was purged and given legend status, with Disney and Lucasfilm creating a new canon from the ground up. However, since this new canon isn't afraid of borrowing elements from old expanded universe stories, the best example being the reintroduction of Grand Admiral Thrawn, if Lucasfilm wanted to bring Boba Fett back, well, there is precedent. And beyond the aforementioned split-second cameo, there may be evidence that they already have. Let's explain what we're talking about here. In Chuck Wendig's Star Wars Aftermath trilogy of novels, they explain the demise of the Empire and the start of the New Republic after the end of Return of the Jedi. There are interludes that take place around the galaxy that show how life is changing post-Imperial rule. Now, some of those interludes take place on Tatooine, where there's a new sheriff in town. Literally. I'm talking, of course, about a character named Cobb Vanth, who tries to bring some law to this desolate desert planet, and he does so by wearing a set of battered Mandalorian armor that was found by Jawas next to a sarlacc. Now, it turns out the explosion of Jabba's sail barge ripped a hole in the sarlacc, and everything came spilling out of its long 1,000-year tum, including a set of Mandalorian armor. Now, there was no word on whether a body was found inside of it, but this definitely opens up possibilities for Mr. Fett's return. But does this mean that Boba somehow regained his iconic greenish armor from Cobb Vanth, who most likely isn't Boba, but then again, maybe he is? And now this maybe Boba's hanging out with the Mandalorian clan 5 years after his maybe death? Well, let's go deeper. It's worth stating that while Boba Fett wears Mandalorian armor, he is not a member of a Mandalorian clan. This is a pretty important distinction to make in many fans' minds and in many comment sections. You guys are crazy. So it would be unlikely for him to just chill with a bunch of Mandos if he isn't one of them and actually is just wearing their armor. Now, maybe he could have joined the same clan as the titular Mandalorian did, who also might not have been a Mandalorian by birth, which seems to be implied by the flashbacks that we see in Episode 1. So, is that Boba or not? Well, at this point, the evidence is unfortunately inconclusive. For the time being, he is Schrodinger's Fett. He's both alive and dead until we see direct evidence of one or the other. While it's entirely possible for Star Wars to tease Boba Fett's return as a background cameo, it seems equally likely they'd want to do something a bit larger with one of their iconic characters. I mean, there's no way that Lucasfilm doesn't want Boba Fett to return in some way. There were even rumors that Lucasfilm was preparing to announce a Boba Fett standalone movie before they froze that idea deep in carbonite. Although, to be honest, that could have been a prequel to the original trilogy instead of following the events of Return of the Jedi. Ultimately, we'll just have to wait and see what Lucasfilm's next move for old Boba is. Honestly, maybe he can go to bounty hunting school because he sucks ass at his one job. Maybe we'll learn more about that as season 1 of The Mandalorian continues on Disney+. But what do you think? Do you think that was actually Boba Fett, or is that just some guy in cool cosplay? And if that wasn't him, how do you think Boba Fett will eventually be reintroduced? A movie, a Disney Plus series, a novel, a series of GIF images culminating in a scavenger hunt? And what other cameos do you hope to see in The Mandalorian? Honestly, we've got our fingers crossed for Dexter Jetster, and honestly, I'm gonna be real with you, Elon's least bag now. Did he clean up his act? Who knows? Let's discuss. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you saw, why not give us a like and subscribe? And if you want to get notified every time we go live with a show or drop a new video, please feel free to mash that little bell. That way you can be up to date on all the latest theories, news, and rumors in the pop culture world.